Hi, everyone. I am Jessie on Nichols George. I go by On. That's what most people know me as. Some people know me as Jessie, and that's okay, whatever name. But I do prefer On. And I just wanted to take a little bit of time to share a little bit of background with you about me, about my work, and to share with you what this coding interpretation is about and what it is possible to do with this work in your life. So I really refer to myself as a scribe more than an author because I work very specifically in truth and wisdom that is based in or originating in divine sources. And when I say that, it is kind of like the truth that runs through a multiple amount of belief systems, practices, cultures, things like that. And so this work is really a sort of all encompassing in a way, but also very fluid and very open work. And it encompasses over 50 different modalities, belief systems, practices that are all integrated into this work. And I've actually been working with clients since 1981. And I always kind of laugh when these people come to me and they go, well, what are your qualifications? Oh, you don't have a traditional counseling degree? No, I don't have a traditional counseling degree, but what I do have is many decades of experience of working with clients. And so I have also a lot of life experiences. I faced a lot of difficult things in my life, from medical issues to homelessness to addictive patterns and addictive behaviors and abusive things in my life, and just pretty much you name it, I've been there. I've been there on some end of the spectrum in a pretty good way to understand it. And that is coupled with some traditional education and knowledge. In college, I studied recreation and leisure studies, business management, because I wanted to play and have fun in life. I wasn't a stick in the office person at that time. And so I was very excited about it. And it was actually a science degree, so it wasn't an arts degree. We had to do things like write grant proposals and stuff like that. So I had a lot of background actually. And when you work in management, particularly in a field like that, you're really dealing with aspects of counseling and coaching. And I did a lot of work with children's programs and the YMCA at that time, and camp programs, resident camps, summer camps. And these things all taught me about the patterns of life, the patterns of people, the way things work, the different ways that people thought. And it wasn't just, again, about a traditional one path or one style. It was about understanding people and about understanding life and how they functioned and what they needed. So in some ways, I can say that was maybe more valuable than the actual psychology classes I took. And yes, I did take psychology classes in college. And some of those options. And then my thesis work was based on how the atmosphere and environment within a facility affected client perceptions. So all along the way, I've been dealing with these energy patterns and these energy currents. And then outside of my traditional studies, I was doing all kinds of things, from studying Druidic practices to yoga practices to being raised in a Presbyterian church to exploring just about anything and everything I could, because I loved learning about the different ways people thought, the different things that were important in their traditions and their belief systems and their religions. And I was so blessed to grow up around a variety of cultures. So I had friends that were Jewish and friends that were Asian and friends that were Indian, and I got to participate in their different churches and their different practices. And it was exciting for me because I saw things that I loved in each one. I saw things that I thought maybe weren't so much for me along the way, and that was okay too. And I think this is true of most things. We take on to something, and usually things are not just 100% our way. in things. So the reason that the other modalities didn't stick for me directly is, again, they would take me so far, it seemed. And I'm speaking for me personally. I know of people who are great in astrology. I know of people who are great in all these different modalities or religions, and they're wonderful in what they do and they love because that one thing fully resonated for them. And that's great. And that's wonderful. For me, it just didn't carry me all the way through. And I kept coming up with questions. Like I hand cast charts in astrology. That's what I learned to do. I didn't use computer programs and things like that. And it took me so far because I always had the questions of, okay, so if everybody who is a Scorpio, technically is the same ways, if you were born in the same hospital at the same time on the same day, technically you should be the same person based on those principles. And I wasn't. I wasn't the same as everybody else. And this is where the code work really started to open up for me because along the way, as my understanding and my integrating, every time I learned something, I integrated it in and integrated it in and started realizing that the core truth ran through all of these different systems. It wasn't isolated to one system. It wasn't just in one practice or just one belief. They all had their things that were very true, and they all had their things that maybe some things weren't so true. And again, we're all individuals. So, it's not a one size fits all for a lot of people, although many people do find one thing that resonates the most for them, and that's what they stick with. So when I started into doing the code work, that really originated around the end of 2013, going into 2014. But it was really more like 2016, going into 2017, that I really got to, I guess, practice and to really create the code journey work. So that earlier part of that actually opened up and it brought me around, and I started realizing this held a truth that I couldn't deny when I got into this work. When I found this particular combination or integration of work, it was like I couldn't deny it. The truth was there. And you can read more about the story and the code journey work and how it came about. But in this process, what I learned was where the truth was and how these different patterns were playing out, and found that I had a real gift for interpreting these different code energy patterns. And that's really what coding is. That's what being a coding interpreter is for me. I had to come up with a title because everybody needed something to call me, but I'm not really very into titles, to tell you the truth. I don't like to be into all the labels and things like that. And I think sometimes they can be more confusing than helpful. But everybody seems to want a title to call you by. They need that when you're out promoting yourself and doing things. And so I came up with the title, kind of how that originated in there. But what I found in this process, and it was the end of 2017 going into 2018 when the first edition of the Code Journey was released, and it was this guide for maneuvering through life on Earth. And you can certainly go onto my website, compassioncodes.com, and take a look at it and see more of what that's about. But I really wanted to create this guidebook that people could integrate into their daily lives, where it wasn't like this whole separate practice that took an hour or 2 hours or labor intensive, because I knew for myself, and with a lot of these other practices, if it required me to dedicate 3 hours a day to the practice, it probably wasn't going to get done. And if it wasn't going to get done, it wasn't going to work for me. It had to integrate into my daily life, into what I was already doing, to be a part of my life, to be a part of everything that I did and every interaction that I had. And that's where this work really started to resonate for me. So what I'm really doing as a coding interpreter is that it's like a language. The codes, the energetic patterns are like a language. So I will take these letters and these numbers and things, and I will translate it to a language that I understand. and then I will retranslate it back out into the language that we use here, into daily values and daily principles and practices and things like that, to be aware of. But everything has these energetic patterns. And so as a coding interpreter, I am reading, and I have a special gift for understanding what those energetic patterns are and how they interact with each other. So this is like these patterns, these code energy patterns that I'm talking about are like a blueprint. They're like the blueprint of the essence of God or divine source. So we all have it, right? We're all a different spark of God in a way. We all radiate a different energy piece of what God is about or what divine source is about. And we are here to honor that piece. So we need to all be able to honor it. And that's part of the beauty of this work, is as we understand our code patterns, as we understand more about who we are and that divine spark that we are here to radiate, then we can embrace that more. We can integrate that more into our life. Also, as we learn more about these different patterns that other people are operating on, that places are operating on, literally everything from color to texture to design to style to place to person to everything. And we all have our own unique energetic blueprint. Now, this is what really resonated for me over other modalities, all the individual modalities that I studied, because this is something I always felt within myself, that we all have our own unique piece. We all deal with the same influences, but we're all our own unique current of that divine spark and essence in the world. And that does integrate with everything else. It interacts, it integrates with everything else. So this is what I'm doing, is I'm taking and I'm using the wisdom that I have, the wisdom that is innately in everything, and understanding that, translating that into where I can bring it back out and put it into everyday language, put it into things that we can use in our everyday lives. Now, a lot of people think, oh, well, aren't you predicting things? Aren't you just a fortune teller then? Isn't this witchcraft? And no, it actually is not. This is not a predictive tool. What it is it's a tool to work with foresight. Again, I'm a translator, so I'm simply it's like somebody who is standing up, and there's a speaker who speaks one language, German, whatever, Chinese, Asian, whatever, Japanese, whatever the language is, and they are listening to that speaker, and then they're talking in English so that everybody who speaks English can understand it. It's a very similar process in that way. So the speaker, right, that person is saying what they're saying. That's not being changed. It's not the interpreter's perception of what they're saying. They're simply translating it to a language that other people can also understand what the actual message is. So that's the same thing. And when we work with foresight, that's what we're doing. We're not predicting things. We're not living in the fear of things. We're not going, oh my God, this is doom and gloom. I have no power over it. That's the beauty of the codes. It's saying, okay, here's the ingredients I have to work with today. Now, what am I going to do with that? And it's understanding that component piece that says, okay, if I understand that people are more prone to be irritable today. Now, a lot of people would say, oh, that's living in the fear. You're just creating that people are going to be irritable and angry today. No, what I'm doing is I'm understanding that people who are not living in a conscious space, and we have plenty of people in the world not living in that conscious aware space, that they are going to be more reactive, or even I myself could get caught off guard and go into a reaction instead of acting on something, regardless of the amount of knowledge and wisdom that I have, which means I need to stay more on top of when I feel a reaction comes up. That means that I need to step further into the love, further into the compassion, further into the patience, so that I can deal with these people. So this is the difference between foresight and between prediction out there. So this is really more of a guideline. It's not a detailed manual on, okay, step by step, here's what you're going to do. It's not a telling you what to do. You have to decide what to do because you, more than anybody, understand how you work with anger, how you work with greed, right? Some people can work with manipulation and abusive people very well. Other people cannot deal with them whatsoever. So this is understanding yourself. So it's a guideline to say, here's the heads up. It's like a weather forecast, right? If you know it's going to rain, you know to take the umbrella, you know to put your coat on. If you know it's going to be 20 degrees outside, you know you probably need some mittens and a hat or something to stay warm with, right? It's just common sense. It's just practical basics out there. So it's not a prediction. It's not like, oh, I think it's going to snow tomorrow, or I think it's going to rain tomorrow, and then tomorrow comes and it doesn't do that. There's actual practical pieces that are involved in it. So we are in this process and in this work. What I do is I invite you to try things. I invite you to explore things. I invite you to work with different things and to come into greater understanding of yourself. Because when you come into greater understanding of yourself, you will come into greater understanding of other people, how you flow with other people, who you can work with, who you can't work with, and all these different things. And you will be able to strengthen your relationships with other people and to integrate with them a little bit easier, or a little more, again, aware and working from the soul self or divine presence energy. You'll be able to open that up in different things. So it's an invitation and not orders to try things in here. And a lot of people wonder, well, what about the journey versus goals? And I think in this work, it's really a combination. I think it's great to have goals to work towards. That's wonderful. That's fine. But allow yourself the flexibility within that. It's the journey that is going to get you to the goal. And it's not all about meeting a goal or accomplishment. A lot of times, in the end, you can look back and you can say, it's not the accomplishment that mattered as much as what I learned in the process of getting to that accomplishment. It is both. Both are important because some accomplishments are very important in the world. Some, they really don't matter. They're only connected to this world. But the journey and the experience, that is what has an impact. And that's where we really get to make a difference. Like so many people, they get wrapped up in, oh, once I create this refuge, once I create this, this space to help the poor, or this rescue place, then I will have made my big achievement. But what they miss a lot of times is that, again, it's that process. It's all the people that you work with in the process of creating that. It's all the experiences that happen along the way. It's all the lives that are touched along the way. It's all the people that help you along the way. So it is a blend of both the journey and the goal in there. So again, the goal is great, but remember, it's just like in life. When we're 20 years old, we have certain goals that are amazing and great, and we think they are the biggest, most wonderful thing in the world. And then when you're 50 or 60, those are not the same goals you have. Usually, a lot of the ways. There might be pieces of it, like me. I always knew I wanted to help people. I always knew I wanted to make a positive impact, but how that has manifested has changed. So if I was stuck on my goals that I had back when I was 20 years old, right, I would not be doing this work at this point. I would be stuck in that very tight little spot back there. But having the openness and the flexibility and the continuation of things, then I was able to really just keep growing and growing and growing and unfolding things. And, if you live too goal oriented, you're going to miss all the beauty and the magic and the moments, which are spectacular and full of divine presence. And if you're so much in the moment that you don't ever move anywhere, you know, it doesn't matter. You could take everything in the world in, and then if you're never doing anything with it, and again, this could branch to so many different belief systems. So, you know, what I love really with this work is that you never outgrow it. You never do. It flows with you. So if you change modalities in something you're studying personally, professionally, whatever, it moves with you. It integrates into whatever you choose to be doing in life, which is really a cool thing. The codes flow with you. They go with you wherever you choose to go. It's not like, oh, I'm not doing this anymore, so they're not going to work. No, they are a great addition. And again, they integrate in and they work with the different practices because the core principles here are going to route through basically every belief system. You know, there might be a few belief systems that they don't route so well through, maybe satanic practices, I don't know. But for the most part, the core principles are absolutely there. So I love that. You never outgrow them. You're always unfolding these deeper layers within yourself. Even after decades and decades, you know, my life and all of my experiences, I continue to work with these codes every day. And I am always unfolding deeper layers and insights of things, right? You know, when you're 20 years old, you might look at something and say, oh, that's just marketing. And then as you age and you keep developing yourself and you keep growing and you realize, yeah, that's not marketing, that's manipulation. And so when you start to get into it, you start to keep unfolding these nuances. So you never outgrow it. It's not like you just reach a point and that's it and you're done in life. This is an ongoing process. This is a way of living. It's a way of experiencing life that can become incredible. You're breaking your programs, you're breaking all those material inputs that you've had brought in that have programmed you to think that certain things that are good are not good. Right? We think sweets and treats and all that stuff is wonderful, but it's really destructive on our bodies. So, you know, when you look at these things, then that's where you start to learn. And then you start realizing where, you know, at one point in your life, you thought, oh, I'm so deprived because I can't have certain things. And as you grow and you develop into these nuances and you keep unfolding these different layers, it's like you start to see the magic of the things you were bored with before. You start to realize these amazing depths and things in yourself that are full of beauty and full of incredible things. And you start to release the things that you really don't need in life. Lots of things are wonderful. They're fun. I won't deny that, but a lot of them aren't needed, and a lot of them aren't necessarily carrying, you know, all of God's presence in it. But we have a lot of things that maybe when we're younger we think is boring, and as again we unfold these new nuances, we see how incredible they are. The most simple, everyday, basic things. So with this work, what I love also is there is no real right or wrong way of doing things. People do it in all different types of ways. Like when they're working with the book, some people like to read it in the mornings. Some people like to do it as a reflection tool in the evenings. There's so many different ways to work with this. And you have to kind of find your own way in it. I'm not you, so I'm not, you know, here to tell you I can guide you. I can help you and say, here's your information, here's what you have to work with. And now you got to figure out how that works for you. And it does take work. And I will say this, the people who get the most amount of benefits out of this work are the people who actually work with it. It's not one of those things like, okay, today's going to be beautiful and you don't have to do anything to it. No, if you go through your day grumpy, you're not going to get that beauty. If you choose to be mad and pissy at people and things like that, guess what? You're not going to enjoy the love that's coming through. So you have to be willing to work with it. And it is a conscious process and it does take some effort. But again, that's up to you. And the more you integrate it into your daily life, I think the more that you will find that it's a beautiful practice to work with in here. So that's a big thing. Now I have some separate videos that I'm putting out for you as well on the individual components, but what are some of the options that this work has? Well, I have the book out, The Code Journey, Every year, a new edition is put out because the currents change every year. So that's the daily guidebook for maneuvering life on Earth, the Earth that gives you the overview of the year, the months, the days, angel influences, lunar influences, portal influences like meteorite showers and things like that. It covers body, mind, spirit components in it. It's a really beautiful integration that you can just pick up and work on your own. I do personal year reports. So looking at somebody's birthday from one year, going to their birthday in the next year, it's a very customized look at that. Life reports, which takes a look at your name and your, what you're born into and the currents you're born into. But we also look at what your energies are now. If you've changed, for example, your birth name, and you've gotten married and you took on your husband's name, or, in the Baha'i faith, I think it is, the men take on the women's names, things like that. So we look at the currents that you are living under for your life in there and what those are about, and delving into those. There are relationship reports. So looking at how you interact with a spouse or a potential partner, or a friendship or things like that. So your connection to another person. This is really great for parents wanting to understand their children more. Again, I will go into these individual reports in other videos for you, and you can take a look at them. And then location reports are another option to do with this work, which is really looking at where you're living and how the influences of the address that you're living in is there. It's also looking at what might be a good alignment place for you. And then coaching work, basic coaching work where we can take a look, but I work from this code perspective. So understanding what your currents are, and then looking at maybe what you're trying to do, or things that you're considering in life, or challenges that you have, or health issues that you might be dealing with, and understand what the currents are about that for you and how that interacts with you. So, if you're having a particular health issue, like I've dealt with different health issues, there's usually an underlying code pattern. There's an energetic pattern there where that disease is a catalyst for you to learn something. It's a catalyst for you to work on something in there. So coaching can go pretty much anything and everything we can look at with that. So that's just a few options. And I hope that gives you a launching point, because I do get this question where people want to know, well, what can I do with this work? And who are you? And why do you have any experience in what you're telling me? Well, I got decades of experience. 1981 is when I started. That's a long time. That's a lot of decades under my belt, and a lot of life experience, and a lot of observation, and a lot of even traditional learning paths too, with less known teachers, but some very excellent teachers along the way. And so I haven't taken some of those traditional paths, but I do have a balance in there. So I hope this gives you a little more insight into my work, what I can do, and head on over to Compassion Codes, or reach out to me through a private message and just let me know. And check out some of the individual videos of some of the services I offer too. Thank you.